Alright, so I just wanted to take a minute to explain how I'm going about converting the bus, and so if you guys want to do something similar. So this is a 1991 GMC Vandura G3500 bus, or it's more of the G3500 van with the bus chassis attached to it, and that was done by a carpenter. So what I went ahead and decided to do is, after I ripped up all the rubber flooring, and upon prior inspection of the bus when I went to go buy it, I noticed that there was very, very little rust that was actually visible throughout most areas, as well as the plywood underneath the rubber flooring in here looked spectacular. It's really good condition for the age. There's only some water damage to a little bit of the boards, but it was nothing actually major. It's more just along the center aisle. Whenever you're walking in, kids have wet shoes, it seeps through the floor, but there was nothing major that would cause any structural damage or any structural failure. And so what I decided to do was to keep the original plywood that was on the bottom, as well as I am doing this on a budget, so I don't have tons and tons of cash. But what I decided to do was rip up the flooring, which was a pain. So I would suggest, if you're doing something like this, you have a good chisel and you have a hammer to help you get up all of it, because that glue is aged and that glue is pretty good glue. But after you rip up the flooring, inspect the underbelly of the bus and see how it looks from down there, as well as come inside, inspect all the little visible spots that you can. Like I said, mine was in good enough condition where I don't actually have to, and I didn't want to have to invest extra money if I didn't need to. And so luckily mine just happened to turn out the way. I am currently in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Got the bus in El Paso, Texas. Those are both very dry climates. It's the desert, and so vehicles don't rust as easily out here, opposed to more moist climates. So that was pretty lucky for me. But I would suggest inspecting it very thoroughly, seeing how it looks, seeing if you should replace it or not, and seeing if it looks weak. Mine was really strong, super strong actually. Managed to jump around, drop stuff in here, whatever. Everything's held up super nice. So after that, we bought the thermoply, super thin, almost cardboard looking insulation panels over at Home Depot. They were about $11, give or take cents or so. So I bought 3 panels of that, and I did a lot of measuring and cut it with a box cutter to the shape that I needed it. Laid it down, we put a glue adhesive underneath that, as well as a bunch of screws, and that held down. So that's all the way down, super firm. As well as we decided to go with the thin industrial business type carpet, opposed to speaker box carpet like I originally planned. I got it for 49 cents a square foot, opposed to 40 cents for the speaker carpet, so it really wasn't that much more, but it's much thicker, so it'll insulate a little bit better, as well as it's a lot more heavy duty, and it looks super bomb. So that came out to like 50 bucks, so I got 90 square feet for the interior of the bus, which does give you some extra scrap carpet, just in case you do screw up like we did. So a lot of the edges aren't super perfect. What we ended up doing though to cover up is we came up short, right there next to the driver's seat, and so you'll probably see in one of the later videos what we ended up doing was we bought the rubber mat, and so what we did, we cut that to shape, we screwed that down, used a spray adhesive to hold that, and that, it looks good. It's a good hide up, good cover up, not hide up. But on top of that, it's actually really functional, and something that I wish I would have thought of before, instead of kind of coming across it by accident. But what that allows for is that when you're coming in from the outside of the bus through that way, and maybe it's a snowy day, it's a rainy day, you can come in and it gives you a place that's waterproof, that you can take off your shoes, your boots, your socks, any wet clothing, and you can leave it there in order to let it dry or to deal with it the next day. And so it's actually happens to be super, super functional. As well, it does give a more interesting style to the overall flooring of the bus. We have not carpeted the wheel wells yet, but that's because we're going to be building around them, and so we're going to stuff in other insulation besides that after we get that done. I'm currently sitting on the bed frame that I am finishing building, and that's constructed out of 2x4 as well as 2x4 leg supports on the bottom to make sure it's super solid, because the 2x4 did flex in the middle. And then I'm putting some smaller support beams that are 2x2 across, and you guys will, there'll be a more detailed video on the actual bed construction later, but right now we're focusing on the floor. What you want to keep in mind is the flooring of this bus. There is a layer of foam insulation, then there's the plywood, and that's the original floor. And then on top of that I put the other thermoply, which has a reflective side, like a foil side, and the other side's a, I don't know, like a coated cardboard, I guess. Laid that down, which does actually insulate it a little bit better, and then the carpet as well. So all of that is kind of sound deadening, but also insulation, so it keeps it a lot more even in here. The walls will be covered in speaker carpet though, to kind of cover up the edges, as well as help with sound deadening and some insulation. The walls and the roof of the bus are also insulated, because it's transporting kids. They want to transport them with a little bit more comfort, and so there's insulation in the walls, there's insulation in the roof, insulation in the floor. Not the best, but it is insulation, and it holds up pretty well in here. It doesn't get too cold, doesn't get too hot, and granted that's with all the windows closed. So anyway, so after you know the overall build of the floor, you will know, it gives you a little bit more of a better sense of what you can do with it. The biggest thing that I've noticed with the floor is that there's the back left corner, there is maybe like a foot gap, then there's a angled metal surface that comes out, and that's for the gas filling area, and so you kind of have to work around that while you're putting in your floor. And then maybe like another 4-inch gap, and then there's the wheel wells. So it's easiest way to get that done is just get a measuring tape, measure everything out, and just kind of cut from there. Do one thing that I didn't do, which is when you keep your floor insulation panels, use those as a template for your carpeting. It'll make your life so much easier. We tried to do a painter's tape outline and then put that on the carpet, and it looked good, cut it out, and we were way off. So I would suggest using your floor insulation or as a template, or making a template out of cardboard, because it will save you a lot more time, a lot more screw ups, a lot less hassle. So it'll be easier. The bus is a mess right now, which is kind of why I'm not moving the camera, because there's tools and stuff everywhere, and driving this around, everything shifts and shakes, and it's a mess. But overall, the flooring is practically done in here. If you screw up on the edges, you don't have to worry too much, at least if you're doing the build similar to what I'm doing, because there will be furniture around the edges, so you really won't see that. We did pick up a rubber garage door sealer, which we're planning on going around some of the corners that might be visible, but it's not super necessary, and I kind of realized that afterwards. So we'll just have rubber garage sealing to seal up any other cracks and stuff that we have that need to be covered. When you're taking out the bus seats in a 1991 GMC bus, the right side of the bus, there are bolts underneath, so you can't just unscrew them. Some of them will unscrew from the top. The other ones you will have to have someone go underneath to unscrew them, or you can do what I did, which is where you grab an angle grinder and you chop off the heads of the bolt on the top, and most of them will just fall straight through the bottom of the bus. If not, you can grab a pair of pliers or a wrench and you can shake them through, and they'll usually just fall all the way out. The left side, there's some stuff underneath the bus that kind of blocks it, so you can't really access them, but once you cut them off, they're just in there. So I would suggest doing some digging to make sure you get those out, so that later on it doesn't fall out and you run over it and your tires pop, and it's a pain in the butt to do. So don't do that, don't take a risk. But after you get that in, there's a side rails that are on the bus. Side rails, right there. All the way. And those run along both sides of the bus, but they stop maybe a good 4 inches before the back of the bus. So again, that part will be in the bed build. But what you do want to keep in mind is that it's a really good place to be mounting stuff. So you can take off the walls, put in wood on the walls, re-insulate them, do what you want to do. That costs more money, but as well on top of that stuff, it's going to cost a lot more time and it's going to add more weight. So if you keep the walls like I'm doing, you can paint them, you can coat them in whatever you want. But that little rail that runs there is a super great mounting point for a variety of stuff. I have my bed frame for the bottom bunk of this bunk bed that's going to be in the back that is mounted to there, or at least the front beam of that is. That's mounted straight all the way through with a double bolt on each side. And then there's a nut on the bottom, so it's super tight on there, so it's not going anywhere. It'll allow you to reuse a bus seat. I have a bench seat at the front right by the accordion door. And that's mounted on there, not going anywhere. And that's because I'm going to be registering as a van. And so, since it's going to be registered as a van, I need to have seatbelts for everybody coming. And so I'm assuming there's going to be about 3 people. But if for some reason there are more people, because I have this rail here, I can mount more seatbelts in a variety of places, and they will legally be, they'll be legal seatbelts because they are mounted to the frame of the bus and they will not move once they're in there. And so it's something that you might want to keep in mind. It will be something to build around, because if you're trying to install a kitchen unit along the wall, you will have to cut a small nook out for that so that it'll fit over the rail. But it is a good mounting point for anything, opposed to screwing straight through whatever you put on the walls. You can just put a bracket and you can mount it straight down to there. You can also screw through the metal on the walls, and you can screw into the floor plywood, and you'll get super solid stuff once you start putting everything in. So you just want to keep in mind what you're going to do for your floor. Flooring options that a lot of people do, they do laminate flooring, such as the wood laminate that has a ton of weight. It is very water resistant, which is something that's nice. However, it is a lot more weight, and the more weight you have on your bus affects your gas mileage. And so you might want to keep some of that in mind, because the more weight you have on it, less miles to the gallon you get. On top of that, it is already a bus, so it's not getting super amazing miles per gallon. But you want to see if you can keep things as light as you can, as well as think about functionality and some aesthetics. They also do the vinyl flooring. That one's a good one. It is super waterproof. It is pretty lightweight, probably weighs the same amount as the carpet that I have in here. However, it is more expensive. You're looking to pay anywhere from $1 to $3 per square foot, and more than that per square yard. And so if you have the income and you have the means of doing so, I would definitely suggest doing that, because it would be super awesome. However, for the aesthetics of the bus that I'm trying to do on the inside, it's gonna look interesting. I'm not gonna give all the details out until I actually start building it in here and do an official reveal of how it all comes together. But I think the carpet went best with what I'm trying to do. So keep in mind what you're gonna do for the floor. Keep in mind, remember, you have to build somewhere, so it's best to start from the floor up, start from the bottom. So get your flooring done, get your flooring prepped, cleaned, everything else. My floor as well, we did go around with silicone and spray foam, and we insulated every nook and cranny on the original plywood as well, so it is sealed, and along the edges as well, so that no more water can seep through the sides or cracks of the plywood. And then there's the floor insulation. We use a foil tape to cap off all the creases between each panel and along the sides, and it has a water resistant barrier on there as well. And then there's carpet. So the floor is pretty dang close to waterproof, but keep in mind that you should build from the bottom up. So I've talked a ton during this video. I am going to take a couple shots of some of the stuff that I said already. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and like this video. I am getting my words twisted. Peace!